Today is a Sunday, and that in itself should be sufficient for our minds and hearts to be exercised in the care of creation. But if that isn't far more than obvious, let's hear it once more. This is a Sunday. It's a day of rest, recuperation and recharging, because we cannot give or live or even pray without first receiving the means of life, which more than ever in human history are endangered by human activity. And if you're not scared about that, maybe you should be. But the thing to do with fear is to bring it to God, to see what can be done to repurpose the energies of fear and even anger or betrayal at what we together with all our species have got ourselves into. I know how delighted people have been in the past with that jolly myth of enough biblical sayings, do not be afraid, for every day of the year. Though the flip side of that is that the Bible is an exhaustive catalogue of how God's people did or sometimes didn't cope with more than enough things to be scared of for every day of the year. I'm not an angel. Like Greta Thunberg, the autistic Swedish teenager who has suddenly commanded the attention of those with ears to hear, I see fear as a gift. Though it's a gift in the sense of a shove or a yank from a friend, something which helps you with life-saving abruptness to change course, though not a state to live in permanently, which that would amount to torture. Fear is a kick up the backside if your house is on fire, to get the hell out, except that we have nowhere else to go but this common home, as the Pope calls it. Some years ago, I struggled with the comment in the talk by the Jesuit writer Gerard Hughes that pain is kind. His logic was that without discomfort, we wouldn't know of matters in the life of the world which require attention. Though at the time it seemed a little bit too close to the trite and awful prayer that I managed to remove from the Good Friday script in the town of Flint, which ran, "We pray that we may have suffered more than we have sinned." There's nothing good about suffering, but if it's happened, there is potential in what we can do about it. Be scared in order not to dwell in fear, not to let fear get the upper hand. It gets the upper hand when you pretend it doesn't matter. And maybe we're getting close to what is meant by the phrase, the fear of God, which is a bush around which we've been beating in most of our lifetime. It sounds old-fashioned and grim, something to avoid, but is its true meaning to be responsive to the God-given warnings, the signs of the times, in which, thanks to the honesty of thousands of scientists interpreting the prophetic voice of the earth, we are not lacking. Yet in the more neglected passages of the Christian scriptures in the New Testament, the wise and spiritual response which is encouraged is to flee and to run, but also to prepare, to let the knowledge of what lies ahead influence, if not dictate, decisions which would otherwise quite rightly and happily be based on more of the same. The good sense which takes notice, which builds houses on rock rather than on the sand. In our lifetime, we've had wars, injustice, turmoil and technology, but underlying all of that, there is a stability, a reliability, a resilience of a self-healing planet, which already we can no longer take for granted. I don't think this is the time for the spirituality of macho words and gestures like, we'll fix the planet, we'll stop the climate crisis in its tracks. It's not even time for mistaking a blessed hint of clear water, bird song rising above the traffic and breathable air. It's not even time to mistake those blessings for the job done. Churches, when they behave fearlessly, as if they're in control, miss out on the special and sometimes irritating small place we have been offered since the first hard-pressed ragbag of followers of Christ crept furtively out of the houses that they gathered in to care for and encourage each other in just and holy living. Maybe as a smaller UK church and a really tiny Scottish one, it's in our gift to see this clearly, to find a strength in our weakness, to be the yeast in the dough, to be a lamp which, exposed and in public, gives light to the whole community, which of course gives that whole community the chance, but never the compulsion, to make the most of the light. So we can speak out, we can offer a perspective, and because we are all so much part of the culture of infinite growth, which has now reached such a dangerous boiling point, we also speak out to ourselves, preaching to those who believe that they are converted, so that God's people may be God's people for this time and for creation. That has an ever-accelerating urgency. How to learn not to be some diehard who goes down with the ship, but how to flee constructively, how to have the courage to be scared. When the Hebrew slaves were about to clear off from Egypt, God instructed them to feast. Thorough, wholesome. The point was to eat and eat well, with no leftovers, no waste, with journey or transition ahead. And when has it not been, but especially in this time of hockey stick graphs. Churches together in Britain and Ireland, mindful of the forthcoming United Nations Conference on the Environment, which is now to be in Glasgow in 2021, are asking us to squeeze into a calendar which already launches today, the season of creation, an observance of Climate Sunday, where climate is of course shorthand for climate emergency, global overheating, ocean acidification and overheating with the attendant impact on coral, fish breeding and migration cycles, straightforward pollution of air, sea, of everywhere else from the mountaintops to the deepest depths of the sea. The loss of biodiversity, habitats, and the connection here with the emergence of novel diseases into the human realm. Then, of course, we have, and we're in the middle of, the sixth mass extinction, the daily eradication of species before their time, and therefore before they can play their part in the ongoing story of evolution. Talking about climate is even more of a shorthand than inclusive church being welcoming to LGBTQI and more. Be that as it may, just as a Sunday is a reminder of the holiness of the working week, so a special month of Sundays, the season of creation or creation time, today as Climate Sunday, these things are worthwhile if they give that shove, if they put the wind up you, the wind of the Spirit, and if in any sense they help us all to develop our spiritual resilience to what lies ahead for the rest of all our lives. If they do that, they will be worthwhile. But for now, be at peace as we share this reflection from the Eco Congregation AGM this year.